shocking. Redevelopment Tiana Caldwell faces 17 count federal indictment for fraud, bribery, and tampering with evidence. The news hit like a grenade just after 7 a.m. on a frigid Monday in the heart of D.C. Within minutes, headlines were screaming across CNN and Fox News. Smartphones lit up like Christmas trees, coffee splashed onto marble floors, and aides began sprinting through the Capitol's underbelly in barely concealed panic. Tiana Caldwell wasn't just any politician, she was the golden ticket. A rising force in the Democratic ranks and a close confidant of the White House, Caldwell had built her reputation on fiery speeches and unwavering support for working-class neighborhoods. She was seen as incorruptible. But that illusion exploded overnight. The bombshell indictment unsealed just hours earlier revealed Caldwell's alleged entanglement in a sprawling kickback operation tied to federal transportation and infrastructure funds. The Department of Justice accused her of pocketing bribes from real estate developers in return for guiding multi-million-dollar contracts their way money, earmarked for revitalizing her Detroit-based district. Inside, the damning 42-page document were secret wiretap audio featuring Caldwell negotiating terms with a known fixer, a complex financial trail connecting shell accounts to her inner circle, first-hand accounts from 2 former aides who had flipped under pressure. But the nail in the coffin? A federal charge for obstruction pointing to evidence of Caldwell allegedly pressuring witnesses and erasing encrypted files while the investigation was underway. The political fallout was immediate and vicious. Behind tightly shut doors, Democratic leadership plunged into chaos. Encrypted emails were exchanged. Crisis teams convened in conference rooms with blacked-out windows. And over at the White House, frantic aides worked overtime, crafting a response before the media frenzy reached boiling point. Caldwell had been slated to deliver the keynote at a high-profile donor event. Just a week ago, political analysts had floated her name as a serious vice presidential contender. Now, she was radioactive. The Democratic establishment braced for impact, with midterm elections around the corner and conservative PACs wasting no time, flooding battleground states with attack ads. "This could drown us all if we don't get ahead of it," whispered a senior staffer behind closed doors. "We need to move fast." Talk of stripping Caldwell from her committee roles swirled in hushed circles. Even House Speaker Elena Monroe, longtime ally and brunch confidante, had gone completely silent. The Congressional Black Caucus released a tightly worded statement voicing grave concern and affirming the importance of letting the legal process play out. But behind the scenes, panic was spreading like wildfire. What few realized, at least, not yet was, who had truly lit the fuse on this entire investigation. A high-ranking informant inside the FBI had funneled intel to investigative journalist Dorian Reese, the relentless mind behind the underground podcast Capitol Veins. Dorian had been shadowing Caldwell's political moves for over a year, piecing together threads from anonymous tips and irregular financial disclosures. Within hours of the indictment, Dorian dropped a bombshell podcast episode. It delivered allegations that twisted the knife even deeper. Caldwell's older brother and ex-felon turned luxury housing mogulhead received $8.2 million in federal redevelopment grants. Several aides on Caldwell's payroll held quiet ownership stakes in properties tied to implicated firms. One whistleblower claimed Caldwell hosted cash-only contractor meetings inside her private D.C. apartment with the curtains drawn. The episode exploded online, surging to #1 on Apple Podcasts. Dorian's gravel-toned narration, paired with hard-hitting receipts, ignited a firestorm of public backlash. Just 48 hours after the federal charges were unsealed, U.S. Marshals arrived at Caldwell's brownstone in D.C. before sunrise. News crews captured the moment she stepped into the morning Hazastoic, poised, clad in a camel trench and stilettos she peacefully surrendered. Her defense attorney, the legendary and battle-tested Elise Morgenstern, delivered a press statement shortly after. Congresswoman Caldwell categorically denies all allegations. What we're seeing here is a political takedown engineered by those intimidated by her rising influence and fearless voice. But the tide was already turning against her. Protesters flooded the sidewalk outside her Detroit field office. Overnight, public support plunged, with polls revealing a 38% nosedive in favorability. Republican strategists pounced, labeling the saga textbook Democrat deception. Back in the Capitol, Caldwell's former allies started to vanish. Even President Biden offered a carefully measured soundbite. Let the justice system do its job. Federal prosecutors wasted no time, demanding the judge deny bail entirely. But Elise Morgenstern came out swinging, highlighting Caldwell's spotless legal history, her tireless community advocacy, and zero evidence of flight risk. After an intense, high-stakes courtroom standoff, the judge issued a compromise. Bail was set at $5 million, with strict conditions house arrest and a GPS ankle monitor. With the trial now on the horizon, media outlets were already branding it the political showdown of the decade. Caldwell's loyalists mobilized fast, launching digital campaigns under the hashtag number Justice for Tiana, arguing the case was driven by racial bias and strategic character assassination. On the flip side, government accountability groups ramped up demands for tighter congressional ethics laws and more transparency around federal fund allocation. Once again, the nation was bitterly divided. As the first day of the trial crept closer, the courthouse steps turned into a media war zone. Camera crews staked their ground. Pundits speculated with reckless abandon. Democrats braced for a long-term political bruise. Republicans could practically taste the scandal-fueled momentum. Meanwhile, inside her tightly guarded townhouse, Tiana Caldwell readied herself for the fight of her life. Seated alone in her study, lit only by a desk lamp, she was surrounded by legal files, handwritten notes, and walls that seemed to close in with every tick of the clock. She looked out the window at the silhouette of the Capitol dome, piercing the morning fog. This wasn't just a trial about freedom anymore. It was about legacy, loyalty, and whether she'd be remembered as a symbol of injustice or the architect of her own downfall. One thing was undeniable. The truth would either set her free or crush her.